All right, you're all set. All right, well, welcome everyone. This is the February 25th meeting of the Advisory Committee on Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights. Just as we do at the start of every meeting, I do ask that we all go through and introduce ourselves, just so we do have that notated somewhere. We'll go ahead, start in here for committee members, and then we'll go out online. Leanna Fellis, committee member.
Katie Bryden, Vice Chair.
Melissa Bookles, committee member.
Shane Boyce, committee member.
Grace Innes, assistant city solicitor.
Courtney O'Donnell, assistant city manager.
And then out online.
Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mark Roth.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so our first order of business tonight is to elect a chair and vice chair for the upcoming year. Is there anyone who would like to nominate or self-nominate for the position of chair? We'll start with that first. I will go ahead and nominate Katie. She has been vice chair for 2 years and makes a logical sense for you to move up into this role since you have history for the committee.
Thank you. I accept the nomination.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has any interest for the role of chair? Seeing none. Do we have to go through individually where we have someone online? Okay. Mark, I'll start out with you online. How do you vote on Katie for chair?
I would vote yes.
Thank you. Shane?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Katie is our new chair for the upcoming year.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. With that, I have the pleasure of taking over this evening's meeting. I do want to keep at least this piece going in terms of an election of vice chair and hopefully discussion about secretary before we dive into our agenda. Are there any nominations for vice chair or self-nominations?
I'd like to nominate Melissa.
I second that nomination.
I accept.
I know that
We're power hungry group here.
you've been on this committee, so you know what it is, but if there are new people, did you have any questions? If you had any interest, anything that we could explain? Okay.
All right, Mark, will you begin the vote for Melissa as vice chair, please?
I vote yes.
Of course, yes.
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 All right. Thank you very much. I look forward to serving with you. Congratulations. In the past 4 years, we've had the volunteer position of a secretary. It hasn't been something that has been elected upon simply because we haven't needed it. That's something that as we get into our discussion on the ordinance, we can definitely evaluate. Are there any individuals in this moment who would feel comfortable taking on the role of secretary? Which would mean, obviously, making sure that notes from the meeting are kept, shared with the assistant city manager after each meeting and then sent out in the packet the weekend before our meeting.
I am happy to take that role on, just because I'm familiar with everything and can keep that going.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Because it's not an officially elected position, we do not need to vote, but I appreciate you taking that on, Leanna. So before we get into our official city business, we see that we have some folks here, and I do recognize that you had asked for some time to speak. We do, because we have a delay in getting to a lot of these expectations. We don't have the official city language about the 3-minute time and 15-minute block, but we do ask that you are respectful of the time that we have and try to limit your comments, stay on point, and we can't officially promise anything as feedback in this moment, but we definitely welcome the discussion and are happy to share what we can do in the future based on your feedback. So would you like to start?
I would love to. I set this for 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't gonna be that.
I don't think I'll even use that much, but anyway. Okay.
Thank you.
I got other stuff coming my way at the same time.
Yeah,
This is a committee of 9.
correct.
Do you have to have a quorum to have a meeting?
We do.
So you have 5.
Mhm.
Cool. Just wondering.
And just to be clear, we have to have a quorum to officially vote on any business or move forward any work that we've been doing, but in terms of actually discussion, open conversation, that does not need the quorum.
Also, I'm sorry, would you mind stating your name for the record?
You got it. The people, let me start like that. Dear committee members, I am Ray Dubois and I've been a Bangor resident since 1982. So I've been around longer than any of you. Okay, so the people to whom this is most directed, I don't see here. But I will say it anyway, because it's being recorded and all that stuff.
Thank you.
I'm here to speak in reference to the outburst and name calling that was demonstrated by a couple of the members of your committee 2 weeks ago. I suppose by your standards, and remember, this is directed primarily to them, using the technique that was used then. I am a white, racial, Christian, neo-Nazi, homophobic person, and any other juvenile name calling that you might feel furthers your cause as a committee, but you're doing yourself harm by displaying the exact behaviors your committee description would lead me to believe you want to abolish. My children might have spoken like you did, again referring to the particular people I'm talking about, when they were adolescents, but thank God they're now grown up and acting like grown-ups. So here are a few suggestions.
That's all right, it's fine, you're good.
Here are a few suggestions short of dissolving your entire committee, which I know has been discussed and put forth. Number 1, do something productive as a committee. And I was unable to find any committee minutes to try to look back and see what has been discussed. So that's one of my questions.
Sure.
How do I
Sure.
find that kind of information? Provide suggestions about things that are needed, not just wanted, because those outbursts from a couple of weeks ago were kind of more along the lines of we want this, but not necessarily we need this. Like feel-good statement about Bangor being welcoming. People don't come to Bangor because we have a feel-good resolution about being a welcoming. Number 2, and this is directed primarily to one particular person, apologize to the specific people you've insulted a couple of weeks ago, being clearly sincere, honest, mature, articulate, and clear in what you're actually saying. Sincerity is very important. If you, and I'll skip that. So try to make up for your misbehavior, because that was misbehavior. Number 3, show good faith. This is for the rest of you, by censuring the offenders or vote to remove them from the committee, because the committee's future might be at stake. Number 4, if there is truth to the assertion, this was in reference to the man who was speaking. If there's truth to the assertion that guns and other deadly weapons were used to threaten people you represent, I certainly hope police reports were filed. And I would request the number or the date for the police report so I can also find that. In summary, focus on what your committee is intending to do.
Yeah,
Those are my concerns. I guess I might have taken more than 3 minutes, but anyway.
thank you.
And I should tell you, I'm new to all this stuff, so if I stepped on toes by even sitting over here, I'm not trying to do that, I'm learning.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. And I just want to express our appreciation. We are, a committee, an advisory committee, so we don't have the typical, tenor of our city council meetings of the formality of whether or not we respond and how we respond. So I will just go off the cuff here and say thank you. We will absolutely take these notes into, further meetings and discussion. I think that we learned a lot last Monday and are identifying ways that we can be more productive, to your point. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also, if I may, Chair, as for the minutes, that's actually a city staff issue we discovered with our document management system, which we are working to resolve, and I expect that those will be online within about a week or so.
Okay, so they're on
Yes.
minutes.
Yes, there are minutes. Yep,
Okay,
yeah.
where would I find them online?
In
Cause,
the,
'cause I'm new to this, so
Yeah.
I'm learning
Yeah.
everything.
we can chat offline. I can get your email and I can send you a link, but it would be, in the document management system, usually if you just search minutes. But again, it's not, the issue has not been corrected yet, so it will, but it will be.
Even hearing document management system, that's like, okay. Thank you.
Oh.
A simple document management system.
And I also just want to be clear that the gentleman that spoke and the police report that you're referring to, he's actually not a member of our committee.
Oh, okay.
So I can't speak to be perfectly honest, I can't quite even recall the specifics, so I apologize for that.
He said his name really fast at the beginning. I mean, people know their own names and they said it pretty fast,
Yeah.
but, I don't, so.
Thank you. Thanks, Ray. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there additional individuals that would like to speak? Yeah, you're welcome to, whatever you're comfortable with. Yeah, you can all come over one at a time, whatever you're comfortable with.
Mike Farrell, longtime resident of Bangor. So we do know that this is under Article 6, the Advisory Committee on Racial Equality and Inclusion and Human Rights under statute 2338. And the members consist of 9 regular members and 4 non-voting members. And according to Robert's rules, if a quorum is not met in the meeting, which is 5, that's standard under Robert's rules, then immediately it has to be adjourned or postponed. This is under Robert's rules. Robert's rules covers, you know, any type of meetings, just so we can be more organized and more efficient and for time's sake. So there's no more discussion. It's just adjourned and or postponed. The advisory committee has violated Robert's rules on numerous occasions by not following the rules. And as Bray was speaking, one of your members at a recent council meeting called Councilwoman Fish and Councilman Mallard white Christian neo-Nazi, and another individual called him a homophobe. This type of language is defamatory in nature and potentially subject to legal action. This committee has violated their own title. So that's what we're really kind of concerned about. Your title kind of says it all and you violated it. Your members directly violated their individual human rights, equality, and inclusion. Individuals of this committee are causing a hostile environment and making individuals feel unsafe and unwelcome. Because I mean, if you look at it, white Christians make up 65–75% of the population. Everybody wants to feel welcome. Everybody wants to feel included. So I think that's very important that we get back to the basic stuff. Other individuals were heard clapping these hostile defamatory comments. This is harassment of the worst kind and will not be tolerated and should not be tolerated. So we're hoping that the committee will take action and there'll be some type of resolution. The political action committee, as I feel, should be abolished as soon as possible, and individuals making defamatory names, calling out at the Bangor City Council members must be censured. Now, censured is kind of outlined in Robert's rules, and you can do it however you want. I would suggest they're never allowed to speak again at any city council meetings. The advisory committee does not represent the citizens of Bangor. Your committee, based on what was said, is a disgrace, and my opinion is must be abolished. So you kind of see the heartfelt, you know, if you have one member that says those kind of things, it really affects a larger community. So, you know, we all take exception to that. So please listen to our comments and take action.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Suzette Furrow, resident of Bangor. I did speak last night also about this at the council meeting, and I echo the same things that other people have said, but my issue too is who chooses this is established by the members here. I don't know if there's a religious or spiritual interest represented in the group here. I'm not familiar with everyone's background, but I just don't see, like, I don't see a senior citizen representative. I don't see a disabled military, a lot of disabled military in this area. I just don't, it just seems like certain categories are chosen of people and maybe other people don't feel like their rights are protected or a part of the conversation here. I do watch your meetings and it seems like there's an overemphasis on some things. And then when I heard the white Christian, I thought, is this a anti-Christian white group? Because that's, it just seems like that's, antithetical to the group. And then as far as I know, like I said, I've watched, and the DEIB coordinator for Bangor Schools was here too. It just seems like there's no focus on learning disabled or physically disabled or learning disabled. I've worked with dyslexic kids. I know it's 20% of the population. And I just didn't hear any conversation about that. It seemed like it was more of a focus on sexual orientation, which kids are kind of young for that kind of conversation. Since the schools are not doing very well at the worst scores in 30 years, I think more of the focus should be on the learning disabilities. If you check the jails, a lot of people have learning disabilities in the jails. A lot of the homeless people have learning disabilities. So just felt like an overemphasis on other areas. And then also the conversation before about problematic names. I just think a lot of the discussion is subjective. And so it's, a matter of your own opinion, and maybe people don't share that opinion. So just to be more open and inclusive for this committee, I just think that would be helpful. Okay.
Thank you for that. May I offer something?
Yes.
If you refer back to, I believe it's November 2023, I specifically spoke with the superintendent in regards to neurodiversity in the schools and the need to address that better.
Okay.
That is my personal interest. So I think if you dig maybe a little further back into some of those meetings, you'll find there's some discussion there about that.
Okay.
But I believe it is November 2023 specifically.
Okay.
It comes up to almost every single time we have someone from the school here.
Okay.
Hillary Simmons, resident of Bangor. First of all, I'm looking at your mission, and you're supposed to promote the goal of accepting, respecting, and valuing differences. At the city council meeting, the members that spoke, were you speaking as members of this committee or as personal residents of the city? Because if you're speaking as personal residents of the city, nobody needed to know that you are on this committee. So for me, as a resident of the city of Bangor, I feel that this committee should be abolished. The people that spoke at that meeting should be kicked off if this committee is not taken care of, because you, to me, were acting as if you were representing this committee, and this is all not part of your mission. You are very hateful, disrespecting citizens, and this committee is supposed to be all about respect, is it not? And taking in each individual person as individuals and treating them all with respect. At that meeting, there was no respect had by the members of this committee. There was also another member there that I know she is on the school board. She did not mention that she was on the school board. She was there as a personal, or herself as a resident of Bangor. Everybody else made a comment of what committee they were part of. So to me, you were representing this committee, and that was not acceptable as a resident of the city of Bangor. And I feel that the two council members that you did make inappropriate names to, they should take legal action upon, not just the person personally, but also the committee.
Thank you. Hillary, before you go, can I just say that we as a committee did determine that we have an agreed upon statement as a reflection of the vote, and that was read by me. That was the first statement that was read that we all agreed upon. Every statement that was given after that was by the individual as an individual citizen, and was not representative of our agreed upon message.
I wouldn't have known that, because why did I need to know what other individual committee they were on?
That's why
I don't
said it.
come up here and say to you, I work for X and X. I'm here speaking as a resident of Bangor, has no effect on my job or where else I
Mhm.
work.
Yeah, and
I'm
I'm,
representing myself and not the committee.
I never said that I was a member of this committee when I spoke.
You might want to
Thank
go
you.
back and listen to it, ma'am, because you did.
but I am happy to share our agreed upon, message.
Yep, that would be great, because I also think you probably need to look at your agreed upon message and your mission statement and what your focus should be, and not, again, secluding other groups.
Thank you, Hillary.
So.
Councilor Miller?
Save the best till the.
Yeah.
Well, I have several questions to ask. The first one is, as was mentioned earlier, when you don't have a quorum, you're not allowed to speak if there are more than 3 people involved, or 3 people or more. Because that constitutes a meeting. And you have to advertise if you have a special meeting, and you don't do that. You continue to gab and talk about everything. That's not legal, according to Robert's rules.
I don't believe that's true.
It is true. I am, as a counselor, cannot meet with 2 counselors and talk about anything.
But in those
This,
meetings.
may I finish?
Yes, of course.
This group, as a group, cannot meet and talk about things and expect it to be part of the record. If you wanna go off to the coffee shop and talk about it, maybe that's all right. We can't even do that.
That's not all right.
So the question is, are you members of this committee? Or are you just here for a gab session? You know, I just find that intolerable. You have to follow the same rules as everyone else does.
Mhm.
I'm not
So we
answering
have the
questions.
city solicitor here who might be able to shed some light on whether or
The
not.
question has been asked of the city
I was
solicitor.
speaking. I was speaking.
I'm sorry, but I think I had the floor.
You asked a question, we're trying to answer the question.
I don't
Alright.
expect you to answer it. Are you in charge?
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I do want this to be a civil and thoughtful conversation, and I recognize that people are, the energy is high. I recognize that. I do want to address that I had heard, I watched last night's meeting and I did hear, I believe it was Suzette's concern about the quorum, so I did look it up. And according to Robert's Rules of Order, without a quorum, a committee cannot take official action, but they can continue to meet to discuss matters, gather information, hold informal discussions,
Depends on which,
and prepare reports.
Excuse me.
Oh, that's all right.
depends on, I read Robert's rules also, and the impression I got in the opinion was that you can't meet and discuss things. Are we allowed to discuss things as a council? 3 or more?
So if you are in a public noticed meeting and it is accessible to the public, the 3 counselors can sit here and have a conversation. What isn't
Agreed.
allowed is 3 counselors who choose to go to a coffee shop and sit and have a discussion about public business.
What about other committees? Are other committees allowed to meet if they don't have a quorum?
So they may very well, as long as it was publicly noticed and as well as long as it is accessible. Yes, it is an official meeting, but without a quorum, they cannot take action. And so at the meetings
So-
where we have not had a quorum, we have, the notices have been publicly, the meetings have been publicly noticed. We have remained on the air, we have remained accessible to the public to attend and to hear information. So no action has been taken.
I want a legal opinion on it, because
Understood, and I
it's-
think you asked for it
I've already
today.
asked for it.
Correct.
Because I think you're wrong, but that's.
That's okay.
No, I agree. We can't
That's
all be
okay.
right.
That's right.
But anyway, because I noticed you're going to approve minutes that today, and I believe in one of them, there wasn't a quorum. So how do you approve minutes when you don't
Actually,
have a quorum?
that's exactly why today we have to approve the meeting minutes from October, December, and January, because all 3 of those meetings, unfortunately, we did not have.
So how
What
do
I
you approve
believe
minutes
he's
when you don't
asking-
have a quorum?
So I believe what he's saying is, so I think to ensure the highest level of transparency and integrity, what we have kept is minutes of the discussions that took place.
Yeah.
And while no action was taken, therefore, because we couldn't take action because there wasn't a quorum, to not leave a record of the discussion really lacks transparency. So we've continued to take minutes because they can, we believe, sit and discuss items, and that information should be recorded and noted.
That's only if you're allowed to have the meeting.
Understood.
So
I
as
understand
it
your
stands right
distinction.
now, you cannot approve these until we get a decision on whether it was an official meeting or not.
I would suggest that the committee go ahead and approve them, and if there is a need for the legal rollback, that we will work with city solicitors.
Okay, I would suggest you don't call them minutes of the meeting, you call them, you know, accessory.
We will
minutes.
call, we will approve the
Whatever.
records of the meeting, yes.
Well, I disagree, but that's
Okay.
fine. Now, the other question I have is, this group is an advisory committee to the council. Did you advise the council on what you were going to say before you spoke?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't rhetorical. Yes, we wrote, together, what we felt was an appropriate response to, the vote on the proclamation and how we would like to advise the councilors to vote in favor of it. That was the statement that was given by me, and I'm happy to provide you with a copy of everyone here. With a copy
I
of
think,
that.
so,
I'm sorry if I'm having a hard
No,
time not answering
I think what he's saying, I
I
think what
think
he's
you're
trying to get at is,
translating.
he's trying to make a distinction that, did you advise him of your opinion before or just provide it as public comment? I think was the distinction he was trying to make. And I believe what the committee, is she still the vice chair?
No, she's
Oh, she's
chair.
Chair now, did that happen? Okay, sorry, I wasn't at that last week. Is trying to share is that they shared that through the public comment process. And I believe your concern is that it should have been provided to the council
Correct.
and not publicly.
When we
And
go-
that's his distinction.
When we
Yes.
speak, when we speak before the legislature, when any of the members of the different groups of the city, before they speak, they come to the council with what they're going to say. It was inappropriate for you to speak without advising us first. You technically work for us. You're not doing well.
And so I want to be real careful here
Oh,
because
I
you are
know.
speaking as a
I'm
counselor.
speaking as an
And you are-
individual.
Well, but you say you have the responsibility to come before us. So you were telling this committee that they work for you and they need to speak to you
Right.
first. So you were not speaking as an individual. So I think you should step back from that right now, just to make
Okay,
sure.
fine. But as a citizen,
And that's
I
okay.
expect you to be advising the council, which you're not doing. You're off in left field doing whatever you want. The council doesn't matter.
Yes,
And therefore, I personally feel that maybe we don't need the committee. If you're not going to advise the council, why do we have you?
And so that actually brings up the point that we have been working on this entire time, which is to have council participate in our meetings. And so that we can actually be more on the same page about, it feels like oftentimes this committee does receive information after it happened. I would have loved to receive the proclamation beforehand. I would have loved for our committee to have the chance to look at that proclamation, probably address some of the issues that most of the members have with it, with a true lens of equity. That would have been ideal, and that is what we have been asking for since 2020. And so I am in full agreement with you, Counselor, on the expectation that we could work better with our communication and the ways in which we advise.
Well, I'll make your life more difficult now. I volunteered to be on the committee.
Yeah, I am fine with that. We would love to have a council representative on this committee to make sure that what we're doing does actually address what's happening at the city level. Because we don't want to play catch up. We don't want to feel like we're missing out on ways that we can volunteer our expertise.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
And it's like, if one hand doesn't know what the other's doing,
Yeah,
then we're not in sync.
and
I'm not saying I'll agree with everything you do, and you're not saying you agree with everything I say, and we don't expect that in a meeting. We want the best results for the city. I don't know if I should have said that I wanted to be on the committee. It's up to you.
you're stuck.
It's not
now,
a
yeah.
committee,
It's up to the chair of
But
the.
technically you wouldn't be on the committee, but you could certainly participate in a, to
Liaison.
some degree as liaison or something of
Yeah.
that nature, I'm sure.
It was very helpful a few years ago, when Councilor Fournier was the council chair. He participated in just being able to give us that higher level view of what these policies and ordinances look like was extremely helpful. So we welcome it, truly. It'll be fun.
So I have to wait till we hear what, I don't know if Kara has to determine how it's done.
So right now, the ordinance is not written in such a way that it includes a liaison position from the city council. And part of, to the committee chair's point is, that's what they're working towards, is how do we redefine the goals and missions of the committee to do the work that we all want done. And I will say that it's been, when the committee was started, I believe, there was no school committee, and it was really meant to be, it was really spearheaded by, spearheaded?
Spurred and spearheaded.
I was going with spurred by concerns coming out of the high school.
Yeah.
And then it was, well, we ought to be looking at equity issues from a more holistic basis and not just narrowing and being reactionary to concerns, hence the formation of the committee.
Mhm.
And then the school department has moved on and created a very robust DEIB committee. And so now how do we dovetail and work together and not overlap? And that's really what the committee, it's actually what was on the,
Yeah.
it's actually what's on the agenda, and it's been on the agenda, is to talk through how the committee can propose some changes that are more reflective of the current needs that exist.
Okay. We'll wait and see the decision, and I will anxiously await the determination of the legal department.
Yes. Yeah, we're working on it.
I knew you were,
Yeah.
but the meeting was tonight, so I had to ask the question.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, citizen.
Yes.
Because you're not here as a counselor, you're here as a citizen.
Remember that.
Okay.
Some people want to hear what I,
Oh, so you're more than welcome.
Sonia Mala. I think the person at the table here who called my husband and another woman, the white Christian neo-Nazi, needs to apologize publicly. It puts your committee in a bad light. You people are all young people. I don't see diversity in your committee. Where is it?
The gentleman on the
Well,
One
I'm
person,
not a young person.
yeah.
I'm 78 years old.
You are the one member and everything. I don't see anyone that is a senior citizen on your committee,
I'm a senior citizen.
but you can't serve dual purposes. You need to be on that committee serving as one entity.
What do you, I'm not quite sure what
If
that
he's
question.
handicapped or physically handicapped, that's his basis for being on the committee.
No, it's not, no, you don't create.
But where is the diversity?
So that's, the council appoints the committee members based on individuals who apply and they go through an interview process. And I don't believe it's appropriate to discuss why somebody somebody is not selected to be on the committee. And if you would like to address how the committees are selected, then I suggest that you work through the city clerk, because it is set out in ordinance how every committee is
That's
appointed.
fine, but I
Yep.
do think the committee does owe Mr. Maller and Ms. Fish an apology. There was no need of the name calling at a public meeting. And I'm looking right at you.
I know, thank you.
Yeah. You need to be civil when you're doing things. You need to be respectful, and you weren't. Nobody had called you any names or anything. They had a difference of opinion with you. It didn't deserve the backlash that your committee members put on those council members. They had a right to vote differently than what you wanted. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia.
That's a good question. How are you?
I'm sorry, can you come
Can you
to the table
yes.
just to make sure Mark can hear?
As a committee, how are you supposed to communicate with the city council? How would that normally?
Could I ask you to share, maybe you spoke
Yeah, he
before I
does.
came in? Okay,
Right.
just wanted to make sure. Okay, She's good.
82?
82.
82.
So how are you supposed to liaison with the city council?
So for example, last year, the committee reviewed, the naming of places policy. That is a city council adopted policy. The committee looked at it, made some recommended changes. Those changes came forward through the Government Operations Committee, which is a standing committee of the city council. And ultimately, based on the review, the Operations Committee was passed on to the city council for adoption. A lot of the mission of the committee is based on reviewing of policies and documents to make sure from an equity perspective, we have not missed an opportunity to connect with someone. So for example, we've done a lot of public outreach around our community development, annual, consolidated plan. We've done a lot of public outreach on our comprehensive plan. And one of the places that they do the outreach is with this committee, because this committee has a different perception and a different lens in which they look at policies or outreach through. No different than they went to the library and made presentations, they went to local schools and made presentations. And the feedback from the community, as well as this committee, who is representative of community, is incorporated in any documents that come forward for ultimate adoption by the city council. For example, the comprehensive plan.
How's that communication done? In other words, when the city council has a workshop, does the committee send members to the workshop or
So,
just emails?
Not historically. So for example, the comprehensive plan, the CDBG consolidated plan, there's a city staff member who is accumulating the feedback from all areas. So feedback from the committee is incorporated into the feedback that ends up in an item that comes before the council for adoption.
Okay. So that one person goes to different meetings, collects information.
Correct.
They attend the workshop? Or
Yes.
do they send an email to the different councils?
No. So usually if this staff is coming forward with like the comprehensive plan, there's been a whole lot of public outreach and they come to for that one, it's the Business and Economic Development Committee. They're continually reporting the updates publicly. And then ultimately it results in an item that the city council votes on.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I've taken it from
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate everyone being so thoughtful in collecting feedback and sharing it with us this evening. Thank you very much. Yes.
May I
Shane.
suggest a 5-minute recess?
Oh,
Just a 5-minute break.
sure.
Thank you.
Sure. I would move to approve a quick break.
Second? Do we have to second that?
We've never asked for a break before.
If you need to step away, I would say feel
Yeah.
free.
I'm just saying for everyone to take a beat. That was a heavy conversation and I think we might need to just reset before we move on to business.
And I do want to be mindful of the city solicitor's time and make sure that you are not
That's
staying
fine.
here until
5 minutes.
the wee hours before your FOIA training. So yes, if there is any individual that needs to take a moment.
Suzette, something?
Yeah.
Suzette Furrow, Bangor resident, just about the Roberts rules, because I would like clarification, because I do go to state level committee and they really, Roberts
Yeah.
rules, and it has to be the 12th edition. I mean, there's all these.
Yeah.
And so I would refer to you about to get this straight, because I did take classes also in Roberts rules, and someone that grew up with, Futures Farmers of America. with
Yeah.
Competition.
Yeah.
And he said that there's no, no meeting can be, it has to be adjourned. So, but just clarify it, so.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Suzanne. Thank you. Thank you. I think that as a whole, the committee has a lot to discuss.
Yeah.
Based on the feedback that was shared tonight, and we absolutely will. Unfortunately, this agenda, like I said, does have actions dating back till October, so we will not be able to address those things this evening as a committee. Obviously, when that information gets to us, we'll put that on future committee agendas. So thank you.
5 minutes?
How about 2 minutes?
Sold.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, Shane.
I'm just gonna leave that going, just so you know.
I was gonna say, do you wanna mute it? Just for the,
I'm just gonna refill my water. And at 6:12, we'll readjourn.
I am definitely into.
I don't, I don't wanna,
Mark, we're gonna mute just for 2 minutes, okay?
okay.
That's it.
Mark, we're coming back in about a minute. We're just taking a little break.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane, for that suggestion. We will go ahead and get started back on our agenda under our committee year, Section 3, Freedom of Access Act of FOA training.
That's me. So this is going to be super boring. Sorry. So the Freedom of Access Act is a state statute that was passed by the Maine legislature, and its purpose is that the action of public bodies be taken openly and that records of their actions be open to public inspection. The idea of FOA is that public proceedings exist to aid in the conduct of the people's business. So there's two prongs to FOA. There's records and then there's public proceedings. So we'll cover records first. The intent of the state FOA law is that actions and deliberations of the city and its committees be taken openly and that records of actions be open to public inspection. Any record that's in possession of the city of Bangor or any public official involving the business of the city is considered public unless statutory exceptions apply. There's a number of statutory exceptions, so we're not going to go too far into that, but it's safe to assume that any documents or communications that are created or received by any members of this committee is a public record. So written communications include texts, emails, social media posts, and messaging systems, or any other electronic communication regarding city business. So you have to be very careful about what you're saying in a public record, and also just making sure to keep track of all those different communications. All communications regarding the business or activities of the city should be considered a public record, even if it's on your personal device. It's recommended that you create a new email address for your position on the committee and use that for any committee communications. Don't delete any communications, documents, or notes during committee meetings because they may be the subject of a FOA request. Finally, you should be aware that the city may request to view your electronic communications involving any business of the committee. Moving on to public proceedings. Committee meetings are public proceedings, so this would be a public proceeding. As such, they must be advertised and open to the public. Members of the committee should avoid discussing committee matters outside of the public hearing in order to foster public understanding of the decisions of the committee. Emails amongst members have the potential to be considered a meeting, so members should be careful to not send reply all emails because that could be considered a meeting. Members of the committee should avoid discussion of substantive matters verbally outside of committee meetings and by email, text, or social media. Moving on to the code of ethics, we're just going to cover two things briefly. So confidential information, being on this committee, you might have confidential information that comes before you. So you should be careful to not spread this information. Confidential information means information oral or written that's available to committee members only because of their position with the city, and it's not a matter of public record. And then social media and disclosure statements. So I'm just going to kind of wrap those both up. So on your social media page, you should have in your bio that your anything that you post is your own personal opinion and is not a reflection of the city's opinions. We just like to make that clear, and that you're acting in your own personal capacity and not as a representative of the committee. So I have one in my bio as well. Just my personal opinion. So if any of you have any questions, I can open it up now, but I know that was super quick.
Wasn't even that boring.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee?
No.
All right, seeing
Thank
none,
you
we
for your
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good seeing you again.
Oh, you too. We will get you guys out.
Thank you. We look forward to it. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
So moving on to the last piece of our business for the new committee year, in the packet that was sent out by Assistant City Manager O'Donnell, we have the Advisory Committee on Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights Introduction and Overview. For those of you that are new to the committee, this is something that we developed about a year into the committees, or 2 years.
No, it was like within the last 2 years.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so we recognized recently that there was a need to provide new committee members with information on what to expect, how we would operate our meetings, and what opportunities there were for additional work if you are interested in working on a subcommittee. It really outlines for us what our work plan is, which is identifying what our reviewing policies from the city assistant city manager and the city manager, reviewing ordinances and identifying education and events that we can provide to the city should there be a need. We also identified in this document what our goals were for our long-term priorities, which has really been funneled into subcommittees at this point, a review of our HR and hiring practices, feedback on our unhoused individuals and housing needs in Bangor. And additionally, like I said earlier, our events and education. The meeting times and agendas are outlined in here, and we're putting this on as a draft form for individuals this evening. If there's anything that anyone recognized as missing or should be added that would be more helpful to folks, I'm definitely looking to you, Mark and Shane, as new members. Was there anything in this document that you might have either additionally needed or any feedback?
I'll go first, Mark, if that's all right. My only piece of feedback was it may be worth adding, that we ought to elect a secretary. That's really the
Sure,
only thing that, you know, creates a little bit more structure, and we
Yeah.
have to rely on the
Yep.
goodness of our hearts,
Volunteers.
the goodness of Liana's heart too.
The goodness of Ron. Eye
Really, it was
contact.
Katie. Katie.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. I don't want to put Mark on the spot.
I will just say, as the person who really felt it important to create this, it is a living, breathing document. So if there's something that we notice along the way that we feel would be important to have there, this is the thing that would goes to new members. You know, it is something that they're seeing and is reflective of us. So please do not feel afraid, I think, to say something if it comes up, because it's reflective of the history, how we came to be and how we want to operate.
Thank you.
Do you want to check with Mark? It started.
I did, Mark, can you hear me okay?
I'm sorry?
I was wondering, we're at the point of our agenda looking for feedback for the committee overview document. I wanted to ensure that you had a chance to provide any feedback.
Not right now. I don't have any feedback to provide.
Great, thank you very much. All right then, it's my understanding, and forgive me if I'm wrong, that because this is something that we have determined as a supplemental support, there is no need to vote. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't.
It's
Yes.
approval, okay.
Correct.
Great, wonderful, thank you very much. Moving on to the approval of minutes. I would like to take these all at once in the essence of time. We have the approval meeting minutes of October 29th, December 18th, both in 2024, and our January meeting, January 28th, 2025. These were also included in the packet. Is there any feedback or edits?
I think we have to make a motion first, right?
Yes, yes.
I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from October 29th, December 18th, and January 28th.
I second.
Oh. Now I will ask, are there any feedback, questions, edits before we take a vote? All right, because we have an individual online, we will take this one at a time. Shane, we will start with you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Mark, if you can
Yes,
hear us.
I agree.
Okay, good. Good. Thank you very much. Those minutes are approved. And now we will move into the work session of our meeting, which is to discuss the ordinance of chapter 23, which talks about, or really identifies rather, our committee name, membership, mission, and goals. There are a number of elements to this ordinance that we have been discussing for some length of time in an effort to be more proactive for our conversations earlier and make sure that there's more of an open line of communication. We had some recommendations that we wanted to discuss as a group and share as a group. Thank you.
Oh,
This is.
That's better than trying to steal another vote.
Yeah. So if you keep going, yep, this is the,
Let me just share it so Mark can see it too.
Mark, what Courtney is sharing right now is the chapter 23, which talks about the establishment and membership,
Right.
including our name, committee, mission, goals, and opportunities for changes. I think that the first thing that we'll discuss, which has come up previously, is the committee name. I'll just put it out there for historical purposes, that this name was determined to be the most reflective of what our committee did when this committee was founded in 2020. That said, we've heard feedback over the years that a lot of folks did not know there was a committee working on inclusion or equity, or understanding what the goals of this committee actually hopes and chooses to do, and whether or not this name is reflective of that and how that might actually help us, not only in being more, creating more partnerships and opportunities within the city, but also having more individuals that can join our committee, that know that it exists, that, you know, we're able to have a wider scope, a more holistic and comprehensive scope of individuals that truly represent the city here, because I do agree that that is a problem. So I want to open the floor for discussion. Beginning with the committee member.
As I
Yes,
read,
Mark.
as I read through the ordinance today, it seemed to me that the name of the committee is very appropriate because all the issues in the ordinance are reflective of what the committee's name is. So my feeling would be just that we just maintain the name that has been given to the committee.
Thank you, Mark. Leanna.
I don't see a need to change the name because the effort you put into the committee is not driven by the name of the committee. It is how we are working with city. It is how we are presenting ourselves out in the city with the events that we're engaging in. that's how we get recognition and involvement. The naming, I think that was, I don't know. I recall previous council members who felt that I'll say a flashier name might get more attention to us, but again, it's the work that we're doing that really brings people to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Additional thoughts? Because again, it is my understanding that this is changes to the ordinance that will then be presented to council. It is just a matter of an agreement as a group as to what we should change. I do not believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there needs to be specific votes on any of these elements.
No, I think if throughout this discussion, if we can come to sort of a consensus about what amendments you'd like to make to the ordinance, I do think in the end, if you are going to take it forward, it would be good to take a motion, but I think in this point, you're sort of in that work session.
Toss something down.
Correct.
Of course. Thank you. All right, moving through, in the establishment and membership section, the three sections are, identifying, who it is that we would like to secure, through the personnel committee, is my understanding of the city council, identifying these individuals to participate in this council. And additionally, securing these 4 non-voting members. I would like to make a recommendation that we add an additional section, section D, to this article of establishment here that talks specifically about a city council liaison and puts it formally in our ordinance. Courtney, if you're able to scroll down, I believe, yep. He's here where this language is obviously in draft form. But the goal is that it identifies an individual from the city council to serve as a liaison to our advisory committee, which would include attending committee meetings, presenting city business, any official city business that falls within our scope of work, and then just helps to facilitate that information flow. I do greatly appreciate city manager Lori here actually discussing how many moving pieces there are between workshops and committees and city council to make sure that information is shared. But if we were able to streamline this process so that there was more of an open line of communication, I think that it would really serve our committee. We've seen the success with it. We've seen the success without it. My recommendation is that we add this additional element to our ordinance. And I would love to hear feedback. Shane.
Just an initial thought, could we say at least one of its members in case there is more interest? I think it would be great to have. I mean, obviously, we have to be careful. If it's more than 3, then it's a city council meeting, so. But if 2 people wanted to step up to do that, and maybe they can rotate through, like maybe it doesn't have to be an assigned person. But like a member of city council, at least one will be present at each meeting.
And that may work well, especially as, again, just thinking this through, is each committee has different areas of responsibility. So an item may come through one committee that someone, so definitely something to think about.
Thank you. Member Bellis, and then do you have your hand raised? Thank you.
I guess a point of clarification is up to this point, we have, the city manager, because they have that wider scope, has been able to provide all, has known the higher level of all the meetings and the activity that has happened. Is the expectation that the city council person is now going to replace that, be the one who will be, is going to be the provider of that information? They're the pipeline of info, or is it still going to be our city staff?
Right.
Yeah.
And I do think it should stay with the city staff. Because we are sort of the shepherd, if you will, to shepherd things through. But to your point, I think we used to have some council liaison language somewhere.
Yeah,
And so I think we can dust that off
Mhm.
and maybe that
yeah.
provides a little bit of
Probably a
clarity.
mixture of both.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because then my question would then become, do we need to have a section D that is a city council liaison, but rather maybe someone who becomes a non-voting member of the committee?
Correct.
I would be open to that.
Right.
So to that point, then in this, ordinance, it would go under the non-voting members with
Correct.
the high school students, the higher education students, and this, a city manager and assistant city manager and the superintendent of schools.
I might also just throw out there a suggestion that in C, that it say the city manager or designee, given
Right.
that
Oh, it's
city
right there.
manager
yes.
Lori will be retiring.
Yeah.
City manager will be quite busy, and so us being able to kind of trade off is always a helpful thing.
Absolutely. So to be clear, in C1, you're saying we should adjust it to say the assistant city manager?
No, a
The
city manager
or designate.
Yeah.
Or designate.
So
Thank you.
for
that gives
example,
flexibility,
correct.
yeah.
let's say it's an example that it's gonna be a really big CDBG night
Mhm.
or a planning night,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah,
And the development director could be the staff
Sure.
person who's
Yeah.
attending that, so that you're always sort of have the subject matter expert with you. I think,
I love that, yes.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking of clarifying too, my same question was what they both raised of if it's one single individual that would be that designee, or if it's a rotating basis, or if it's one person and other people can join to sit in, I think that would be.
Mhm. Can I ask, would it make the most sense then, instead of maybe adding a city council liaison as an additional subject to this article, rather to add a subsection 5 under C, and then there say a language akin to city council liaison or designee of a certain subject matter expert, that would be included in those non-voting members of the committee? Would that make more sense?
I do think it would make more sense to make it part of the non-voting membership as a liaison. But if now that you've, unleashed number C and we've gone down this path, what if we considered adding that a member of the school's DEIB committee and look at whether or not we continue to, it's really hard for the high school students who are often involved in a lot of other
Yeah.
commitments, is maybe there should be a place for the school's DEIB committee member
To be
to be a non-voting
Mhm.
member.
And we're not saying it has to be the DEIB person. It could be
Correct.
anyone appointed.
Anybody
by-
who's on the committee. So that way we can always ensure that the two groups are marching in sync with one another.
Mhm.
But at the time, there wasn't such a committee. That
Correct.
this ordinance was created, so maybe replacing the Bangor High student with a member of the committee. I mean, I don't want to lose the youth voice, but I also understand it's difficult for them to.
Yeah, I might suggest just adding another line to still give the students the option if they are interested. And I would suggest that we consider also adding to that, not just Bangor High School, but Bangor Christian and John Baptist, all of the high schools that are represented in Bangor, because even though typically most students who live in Bangor go to Bangor High School, some of them do choose to go to Bangor Christian or John Baptist as tuition paying students. And we would want to give them that opportunity too.
I second that. I love that idea. Getting more students involved.
I
Absolutely.
agree. So to be clear, we are striking the recommendation of section D and instead updating section C1 to the assistant or designee city manager, a student attending a Bangor secondary school.
Yep.
And additionally including here I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the language that the city the council.
A liaison.
A liaison.
A liaison from the council,
Yeah.
okay.
Can I get a point of clarification? We have a student attending Bangor High, but down below a Bangor resident attending one of the colleges.
Correct.
What is the distinction between the two?
So one's a high school student and one's a secondary school.
But one is saying Bangor resident where the other one is not saying Bangor
Correct.
resident, and if we're adding
Correct.
this, do we need to have Bangor? Do we need to add Bangor resident?
I think that's what they would try. I think it should be a Bangor resident, because I
So
think that
Bangor
was the
resident
intent
Right.
from the
attending
high
a
school.
secondary
perspective.
school.
Right,
Okay.
because that guarantees that it is then, because otherwise that would open it up to, someone from Penobscot who goes to John Baptist. and-
Yeah,
Right.
which,
Since we're cleaning up language.
Right.
Yeah,
I do,
I think that if, since the membership, comprises people who are Bangor residents, I think that, the high school students should be a resident as well. A Bangor
I
resident.
agree.
I think just adding that particular phrasing in will help clear that up.
I agree with that,
Oh, and perhaps a group of people talking about equity, working on a plan for
Yeah.
more equity. Might we also add a Bangor resident who's homeschooled? I know that a lot of students attend like Maine Connections Academy or
Mhm.
other homeschool. We don't, we would want to give them the same opportunity that we give a student that goes to a public or private high school.
Absolutely, and I don't know how wide, I mean, right now the net has only been cast to Bangor High
Correct.
School. And to the city manager's point, the individuals that have been offered or recommended are those individuals that just have too much on their plate, so we haven't had that consistent participation. I think that right now, and forgive me if I'm misspeaking, it feels as though we're looking at a two-prong of having participation from the DEIB committee, but additionally ensuring that we have student representation.
Yes.
I think that being as thoughtful as from my first year on this council, when we had a very active high school student, it was incredibly beneficial to see the work that was happening. And the ideas, right, that came from this individual. And so I would like to include opportunities for that to continue.
It provides two different perspectives.
Right.
Right, there's the student who's in the schools, right, versus the DIB person who, depending on who they, put forth, they are different perspectives that they were offering to this group.
This question is for either Courtney or Debbie. If we build this into our ordinance, would we first approach the DEIB committee and request to see if that was something they'd be open to before going to city council?
Yeah, I believe we should check with the superintendent. I'm not quite sure who has oversight or how that committee reports up through, but I think it would behoove us to speak with superintendent first. I wonder if anybody speaks with the superintendent.
I have an idea of how that committee works.
And I just want to also point out that by what you've done is we've now got 6 non-voting members. And so it's beginning to feel a little unwieldy.
That's a very good point.
But attendance is an issue that we're coming up on in a moment, talking
Right.
about.
But if they're non-voting,
Right,
it doesn't help from a voting.
Right, no, I
perspective.
guess
So
what
I'm
I'm
just
saying
saying,
I guess what I'm saying is, one of the things that I know is we're gonna be looking at is trying to improve attendance of committee
Yes.
members. Right, so
yes,
maybe that balance will be restored.
correct. But I do get concerned that you have a 9-member voting committee and you have 6 non-voting members. I mean, but I do agree it's important to have all of those perspectives. So it's neither here nor there.
Would it,
Observational only.
does anyone have any thoughts, again, in terms of ensuring that we're being as equitable as possible? I don't want to take away any of these additional opportunities, but would it behoove us to really think about what a Bangor resident attending a college in the area versus a high school student, are we looking for for individuals with a specific schooling experience, or we're looking for individuals that are able to provide feedback that's directly happening, you know.
I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the high school piece is a direct reflection of what was happening in the community at the
Correct.
time.
Correct. And my assumption would be is that those secondary schools was somewhat related.
Yeah,
It was really a heavy emphasis.
Yeah.
And concern for the health and well-being of students is really what spurred.
for the
Spurred,
formation. So
correct.
maybe we could be just a little bit more thoughtful about the language in terms of, yeah, the individuals that we are looking for and what they're able to represent.
And
whether or
maybe
not-
it's just a student, a Bangor resident who was a student in
Like
any form
secondary or
of.
post-secondary.
Correct.
Yeah.
Regardless.
I think that's a good fit. I think
And
that
then it gets to your choice of schools
Mhm.
and your methodology of schools, and it feels more open.
Again, in the difficulty of having people apply to that position, to that seat.
But
Yep.
there's the way to, when we're looking for applications, the way to do is, to share with the schools. Many of you have connections with the schools. So, and clearly we can get to Bangor schools and through the DEIB committee, so.
all right. I agree with that language. Moving on,
Can you scroll down to the end of the city council liaison? I'm wondering if we might want to consider in the section on committee recommendations that the liaison would bring to the council. Do you think it would be appropriate for that to be the city council liaison as well as a representative of the committee bringing recommendations to the council?
Mark, I am so sorry. Can you say that again? I'm having a hard time.
Okay,
I think he's suggesting that we have both the city council liaison, and then we also have a committee member with the liaison when we go to present ideas. So
Oh,
it's not
okay,
just the
Correct.
city
Right.
councilor, it's
Correct.
also a committee member. Is that accurate, Mark?
yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, sorry. I am so sorry, Mike, because my processing this evening is not as sharp as I would like.
I think part of that is the flow of things that happen, like it goes through GovOps first and then it gets presented up. And I know the times that we've been involved, we have gone to city council for present. So you're just looking to formalize that? Mark, you just want it formalized?
Would you repeat that?
Yeah, so typically when something has come to this council, this committee in the past, there's a process with which it reviews, or if we're submitting it, that it flows through GovOps. Like there's a pathway for it to move through up to council. And anytime we are on the agenda, which granted doesn't happen often, we have come to council when that happens. So, is it that you just want that formalized, that we are at the committee at council when that happens?
I think it would be a good idea to formalize that. Because I think that would represent a closer relationship between the committee and the council. A cooperative relationship.
I don't think
it's critical to do that, but I think it might be something to consider.
I agree with you, Mark, and to Leanna's point, I think that if we're going to be moving that city council liaison up into the non-voting member, then I do feel like, well, we should find a spot that makes the most sense in terms of formalizing that cooperative agreement.
I might suggest that either your chair or your vice chair is the person that is your representative, if you're asking them to go represent the committee, that's your
Yeah.
person, and you have
Yeah.
that under that title.
Yep,
Right.
makes sense.
I think having that as formal language in law would be a really good idea.
Yeah, and I think that we can put that underneath the, we can add that to the roles and responsibilities of the chair.
The officers.
Underneath the officers. To that point, the officers is another thing that we need to discuss. We can absolutely add in that formal cooperative agreement, and I do agree with you. And I appreciate that collaborative language choice. We have now that the committee shall annually elect a chair and a vice chair. I would recommend that we formally adopt identifying a secretary through a vote.
Agreed.
I agree with that.
Agreed.
All right,
And can I just say that perhaps this is the space where we could expand on the roles of those
Yeah,
officers?
yep.
And then that gets to the point that Mark raised,
Mhm.
and it incorporates it nicely.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Does that sound good to you, Mark, formalizing that? Okay.
Very definitely.
And I love the language that you used in terms of cooperative agreement. So we'll keep that. All right, moving on, the big piece is, our member attendance and replacement, because we often have, we struggle sometimes to get a quorum. I have in the, meetings, annual report and quorum piece, in hearing some feedback from folks, drafted some language that might work in terms of identifying those individuals that are excessively absent, what that replacement process looks like, how they're notified, and what an excused absence includes.
Do you want to, if we're going to be adding a secretary position, do you want to delegate maintaining accurate attendance records to the secretary?
That's a
One
great-
less thing for the chair to manage, because they'll already be in the meeting minutes.
Absolutely,
for that person to
great
track that.
suggestion. Yes. So I'm not sure if it's directly in this section or not, but I think one of the things we have to do is take a step back on this, which is look at in the ordinance, it currently says that the meetings are held quarterly. I can tell you since the inception of this committee, we have not met quarterly, we have met monthly. That's
And I
section
know-
A.
I think
of
it says
this.
at least quarterly.
Yeah, and part of the reason, if I remember correctly, that we hadn't done anything about that was we wanted to be flexible, and certainly over time, we've had some of that flexibility. But I think 4 years has shown us the need to have the monthly meetings. I don't see anything wrong with formalizing that, and I think if we're looking at changing this language, we would need to also change that to state that we do meet monthly. So then it makes more sense, some of the things that we are trying to put in place, such as how many meetings you can miss in a certain time frame.
I would just caution that if you end up having to cancel a meeting in a month, or like you wanna take like August off, you would technically be in violation of the ordinance if you were to make that change. As opposed to having the flexibility of the at least language instead. And I just speak from trying to schedule an additional
Correct.
meeting that
Yeah.
was unsuccessful.
That's a great example.
I tried.
I'm reading section 2. I don't know if it's just my way of reading it, but it sounds like within a quarter, if you miss 3, that's excessive absence. So if you only miss 2 every quarter, which would be like 8 of them. I don't know if that's one thing I'm looking at too, of just like, that seems like still a pretty low bar. But I'm not sure if I'm.
No, I completely agree with you. I wasn't sure. Again, I was just like spitballing by myself here, but I was like, I think that, like, how can we quantify it? And what is our quantification? And especially thinking, like, if we don't meet every month, I can't, like, what's the right language? What's the right verbiage?
You could do in a quarter or within a year.
Like 3
something like
within
that.
a year?
Cause your appointments are, I think they're 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So, if somebody goes within like a 12-month rolling period or something like that, so many absences that might get to Melissa's point.
Yeah.
My thought or recommendation is that 3 within a year, because this is still like excessive absences, and also, I think from my understanding, this might have to be written of a non-excused absence. So if like you're missing it because of,
You had a child.
yeah, like.
Let's use that one.
Yeah, for example,
Not allowed.
you shouldn't have, like, that's not counted, but if it's like, you're just skipping three,
Correct.
that seems
And
like
we
a
don't know
pretty,
where you are.
yeah, that seems like a
Yeah.
pretty, still, it's not like outlandish, I think, a suggestion for that.
Who defines what's considered excused?
The chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The chair is recommending the chair.
Bless the chair.
Child.
Bless the chair.
Giving birth, unacceptable.
I only raise that because I know this was a discussion we've had in the past, right? Which is that becomes subjective at some point in time. I'm just playing devil's advocate. Let me just say that out loud.
Not chair. Half an hour. I agree with that, and I don't know if that is, if this should fall to, the,
I was just looking for any, we don't have any references really.
No,
that was
because
part
I
of the
think it's incredibly hard to nail down because you, especially if it's for things like medical reasons, is it really fair to bring that to the attention of like the
Oh,
entire community, for
absolutely.
example?
Right.
yeah.
So you always, I think, run the risk of it being inconsistent perhaps year to year, depending on who the chair is. But I don't think we have a defined way around that per se. Because the flip side of that is you wanna have some level of discretion.
Right.
Because if it truly is medical or something like that, you wanna have that flexibility.
But the best thing is if we could find a way to connect with individuals to say, okay, can you or can't you? And we've tried some of that and see if we could encourage a discussion about if this isn't working, we'd really like to fill the spot. Is this?
So I feel like we have tried that,
I
but we haven't been able to say we're gonna replace.
We
it.
haven't.
Correct.
We've followed up with the city clerk.
Got it.
I don't know if this is adding like too much like subsection of subsection, but for the excused absence, it can also be like if you feel that you were, replaced and you want to like have it come to a vote, right? Let's say Katie's just saying it's unacceptable to be gone having a kid and someone's like, I want to talk to the committee about that and have it a vote, because I think that would be democratic. But I think for the most part, people are going to, if they're not attending, I would imagine they probably don't care if they were removed from it, but that's just an idea.
Maybe if you're removed from the committee, you have the right to appeal to the full committee and then it's a majority vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
So don't think it's the committee
It's
that's
not the
removing
committee's
someone.
Yeah.
So they would appeal to the personnel, or how, like, maybe we put in here that the chair will bring this request to the personnel committee, like, that is.
But there's no provision in ordinance to remove anybody from an appointed commission
But
or
that's what they're
committee. And
trying
that's
to do.
right.
So
So
I think though that if the committee's making a recommendation to the council's personnel committee to remove an individual based off criteria outlined in your ordinance, then as long as you have like a notice requirement, that person in
Right.
theory could attend that meeting where that may occur and state their case at that point, and then the personnel committee may decide not to actually remove that
Okay.
person.
correct.
And those are held in executive session, which
So
gets
it does
around the
protect the
concern over
privacy.
medical and other
Yeah.
reasons.
Correct.
So, to ensure
good.
that I'm
You were just.
truly that language.
Yeah, I was like, I used to like how to type. the-
I know.
On
That was-
occasion, it just rolls out.
Don't ask her to
Doesn't know
repeat
what
it.
she said. I know that.
So
It's recorded.
Thank heavens.
Make the recommendation. That's what I- So let me try to capture to ensure that, that we're correctly understanding. To make the recommendation to the personnel committee is after an agreed upon number of absences, TBD, we will make a recommendation to the personnel committee to.
So my recommendation would be to put in your recommendations for the ordinance updates
Uh-huh.
for there to be some sort of threshold. And then once that threshold is hit, it's automatic in terms of the recommendation from like the chair or the vice chair
Right.
to the personnel committee to take some sort of action to potentially remove that individual based on the criteria you recommended in the ordinance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Luckily, these are recorded, so I can go back.
Just say twice. You got even more succinct this
I am very
time.
process oriented, so I really like this stuff.
I'm grateful. Are there recommendations on the number of absences that? I know we don't really have a bar to go off of here, but.
Well,
I mean,
passing grade is a 70, so
70%.
70% of meetings must be attended, which in a 12-month calendar would be what, 8 of 12 months you must be in attendance.
So just something to think about is that if it's not rolling,
Correct.
you could have somebody that misses the first or the last half of 1 year, and then you have to wait 6 months
Mhm.
into the next one. And the way your terms work, at that point, probably they've quit, but they won't put it in writing, but you have to wait 6 more months.
Kind of,
Would you,
go ahead, Mark.
yes, well, would you want to consider under excessive absences, which might handle the issue that's being discussed right now, instead of on the second line, using the word shall, perhaps change that to may,
Right.
and then it can be open for discussion. Shall is pretty hard and fast, whereas may can take into consideration circumstances that are beyond somebody's control.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I was also going to add to like, part of why I like the 70% missing 4. I think just having like four meetings is a lot spread over the course of a year. But if you miss 4 meetings in a row, like that's 4 months. That's a long period of time. So I don't know how we can maybe add this into writing, but you know, missing 4 meetings over the span of a year looks really different from missing 4 all at once. And just because there is so much that we do discuss and just on a month-to-month basis, I mean, we had the superintendent here 2 months ago. I don't remember exactly what we did last month, but the things that we do carry over from month to month. So if you've missed even just 3 meetings in a row, like that's going to affect, you know, your understanding of what we're doing in the community and what's going on in the community. And I feel like that could really kind of negatively impact your role and effectiveness as a member. So
You
I'm not-
may have multiple metrics, like this or that sort of a
That's
thing,
a
like
great job.
no more than 4 consecutive, or, you know, 6 within a 12-month rolling period, or, you know, you
Okay.
can have more than one sort of metric. Because the other thing to consider too is that if this is a well thought out process, the council could also potentially carry this forward into other committees that may
Right.
meet differently.
Okay.
And so by having those different metrics, and it's also, I think, appropriate from, for a recommendation that might extend beyond this committee to come from this committee.
Okay.
So I think having those different metrics, to your point, might be helpful.
Be really thoughtful.
Yeah, like no more than missing 3 in a row or 4 within a year. I feel like that could be a way of maybe
And-
defining that.
Yeah, and some of our committees, I'm trying to think, most of them have a pretty defined meeting schedules, but some only meet as needed.
Right,
Yeah.
So
like the
there's that
ethics committee.
distinction too.
right. Which in theory though, like if you're meeting as needed and you have
Right.
3 meetings in a year and you miss all 3. I mean, I guess you still haven't hit that threshold, but I guess maybe that's just the risk you run. I don't know. I would just real quick for your notes, Katie, is right now the way this reads is it does not have, it says that the process will be initiated to replace, but actually the personnel committee should just meet to make a decision to remove, and then they would go through their
regular
own process to reappoint. So I don't think that section needs to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In the essence of time, obviously, having come right up against the 7 o'clock mark, would the recommendation be that based on this feedback, this is collected and added to next month's packet for us to approve make any last minute
and additional
for our
edits.
second reading, if you will, and
And I would recommend if you are able to put a draft together, we might also run it by the legal
Legal, yeah.
department. Just to make sure there's nothing kind of big or spicy, and that way if there is, it can come back in time for you all to discuss that further before the recommendation is made to council.
So if next month we agree on language for recommendation, what does it look like going forth for review?
We would need to schedule it for GovOps and then a council, if it was moved forward. So,
GovOps would be, I mean, it would time out because
Yeah,
the
'cause the
meeting
next-
would be the 25th.
right.
Oh,
and then-
GovOps would be on the 7th.
Right. And then the following
And then
meeting
the
would,
following Monday is the,
yeah, so not too bad, I think. And that does give a little bit of time for someone to draft all these wonderful changes and to give legal a little bit of time to review ahead of the next meeting.
I know we're hitting at the time, I just throwing the old timey perspective, which is all I've got now. I would argue.
she's the OG.
I am the OG. I would argue not to use 4. I would argue 2 consecutive with a conversation with the committee member to say, hey, this is. And that's because we are at a meeting where the same people who have not attended are not attending, right? And we don't have a say in the personnel meetings. We're not there when that happens. So I would argue that we may want to explore language that talks about 2 consecutive with a conversation with a committee member saying the third one will result in a potential referral. Obviously, depending upon whatever the excused absences and so on and so forth are. Sometimes we want to have a lot of latitude, and all of our meetings are available to people via
Right.
Zoom. Like, that's something that came out of this committee, was making sure meetings, we're very adamant about that. And we continually see people not taking that option. So as much space and grace as we can give people, we also need to remember that there's business that needs to happen, and that has been continually hampered by people not showing up.
I agree with that.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Mark.
Makes sense.
To be clear, I will draft this. Just, and then next
Rewrite.
month we will review, and then it will go to legal, or do you want it before?
I think it just getting like first pass over by legal to make sure
First
there's no
pass over
big
before
issues,
next
and that
month.
way if there is something that they're concerned about, then you
can
can discuss
incorporate
it at the next meeting.
Okay,
right?
wonderful.
Yeah.
Before we adjourn, I do just, want to put out there if there is any, manager updates that would behoove us at this moment.
Oh,
that would
my.
be-
Wow. So I'm trying to think of manager updates.
That means none, that means there's none.
Teresa's Place open, and we did the ribbon
Yes.
cutting at Teresa's Place yesterday.
That's very
The city
exciting.
actually stepped forward in 2023 to fill the funding gap. Because they recognized, so 41 units of housing, I can't fib, I walked in and went, I could live like that. There's just, it's just laid out nicely, it's cozy and it's comfortable, so
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
I just wish we had more of them.
Mhm.
Does the encampment,
Yep, the encampment.
that was brought up in
Yeah.
last night's meeting, when does that actually?
Yep, so we are hoping to have folks into different spaces at the end of the week. We've had a number of folks who have gone into other forms of housing. A number of folks who have chosen to just not participate. And we continue to work with the handful of folks that are just looking for sort of that interim step. I think it's difficult when somebody's on that journey. I think we all want to get to the end. I don't think we all recognize that sometimes we have to take a step in between. And that it is really just a step. It is not that this is your permanent
Right.
home, but we've got to move along the pathway. So I think those that have been working with me have done a good job of being really consistent. And making sure that people feel connected. Again, none of us can always do exactly what we want, but at least making sure that they have options and that they've been engaged daily. So it should be, I'm sure there'll be some who are just not gonna want to even, we'll work through that, but. Yep. And then I do believe what will also happen at the same time is then outreach can start. working in other areas, which will be good. My assumption is there'll be some sort of an emphasis to get into the warming centers to make sure that we're working with those folks is okay. You know, when this resource closes, what is your plan? And where can we help you?
So, thank you for that, Debbie. On that note, do we have any specific numbers as to how many people are still unhoused?
In that encampment?
Yeah,
So that number fluctuates every day.
I know, but known.
But
like,
there
an
are,
estimate.
there are not a lot. There are not a
Okay,
lot. There's
so, like,
significantly
20,
fewer.
10 or 20?
Yeah, so there's probably 20 there most days.
So when they disband the camp,
Yes.
what is the plan for the people who are there who have not? gone
We're,
into
we're actually
housing?
working to get them into an alternate location
Okay,
with
so-
each individual, correct?
That's what I was wondering.
yes.
If where they were going, if
Yes.
there was a plan, if they were just
Yeah,
being told you
so-
can't be here.
No,
like last
it
time.
was, what's your exit strategy?
Okay,
Well, I'm gonna look for an apartment. Okay, well, that time has come and gone. So in the meantime, are you willing to go into the Hope House shelter? Are you willing to go into Brick Church? We will help store your items. What
Good.
do you need?
that was what I was wondering.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
we have a whole storage policy set up for individuals within the encampment.
Okay,
They're stored at public health. It's been made very clear to every individual out there that that's an option.
I'm glad that this is being managed better.
Correct. And I
Thank
will
you.
say too, that the other piece that we're looking at is working to see if individuals have pets and need to
Yes.
go into a shelter, is that can we work with local groups
Yeah.
to get,
That's
to get
barrier.
pets, perfect, to get pets safely sheltered,
Okay,
in the interim. So there is, other than your own self-acceptance, we have removed every barrier to
good,
getting folks inside.
good. I'm glad to
But
hear
there
that.
is
Thank
free
you.
will,
Yeah.
so.
Like what is your plan? That's my favorite line with anyone. Like, what's your plan? What is your plan?
You've got to have an exit strategy.
Yeah.
There's been an inordinate amount of resources out here daily for months. We've told, we've advocated, we've shared. We've got a lot of people who have housing vouchers. So really one of the beauty things about Teresa's place in many ways is that it is a sliding scale. So we know that there are a number of individuals in shelters, lots of times, older aged individuals who may be receiving a pension that may not be sufficient to go into rental housing, traditional rental housing, but could qualify for housing in Teresa's place on that sliding scale. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, just a quick question. Teresa's place, is there guidelines of who can live there? I'm.
You have to have been chronically homeless. You
Okay,
have to
thank
be
you.
one, there's like 4 different categories that you can qualify through. So for example, if you have an individual who's currently living in a shelter, but whose income isn't such that they could actually attain rent, this may be a good option because it will be on a sliding scale. And then what it does is it creates movement in the shelter system so that an individual who is outside can actually go inside and work on their progress to going to a more permanent solution. So it really creates movement in the housing continuum.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Good news.
Thank you. Thank you for that
Thank
update. Any other business?
I just want to say I was able to attend the Martin Luther King breakfast up at
Yay.
the university, which was wonderful, and I would highly encourage this committee to fund that again for committee members in the future. It was a great networking opportunity, and I believe it's at the Cross Center. Correct?
Well, and I'm gonna
Maybe?
say, I think that's kind of on the work plan
Yep.
for the coming
Mhm.
year, because they would like to relocate that breakfast to Bangor. And when Katie and I spoke with representatives, we talked about how can we make it more of a 2 or 3 day event and not just a breakfast and go home. So is there an opportunity to do programming at the library? Is there an opportunity perhaps to do something at Penobscot Theater?
Mhm.
Whatever it may be, to make it a series, if you will, and not just a breakfast and go home. But that's
Forward to
gonna be
that,
something that's gonna
add it to
require
our
some
agenda.
work this summer.
Exactly. And that group did not waste time. So we are behind now planning for January.
They've got new, I
They
think
do
they've
have a new
installed new
chair.
leadership,
Mhm.
which
Yep.
has really sort of ignited a lot of activity, so.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right. Seeing no other business, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Third. I was gonna say, what do you want? We have to vote.
Sure.
Anna, yes. You're good, Mark. Thank you for being
Yes.
on.
You're welcome.